Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. So happy to be here with you on a Monday. Thank you very much for being here with us on the first Monday after the long holiday weekend here in the U.S. I hope I hope it's going well for you. The return, whether you are still returning or have returned, I hope it's going well for you. We got a great show for you today. Second hour, Father Tad Pacholczyk will be here, and we're going to talk about bioethics. And he's one of the best in the world at talking about bioethics, at thinking through bioethical issues. So that'll be fun. This hour, something that we started doing in the holiday season some years ago, and then became a more regular thing. But I'm particularly glad that we do it during the holiday season because I think that it is much needed. We'll talk about addiction and recovery today from a Catholic perspective. If you'd like to talk about addiction and recovery from a Catholic perspective, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. For many of us, the holidays can be a fraught time, so a good time before the big day, Christmas Day, with all that it brings before it gets here, even before we start Advent, a good time to reflect on how to stay healthy and whole throughout the holidays. 888-318-7884. Here to help us have that conversation, as always, our good friend Scott Wieman, the author of The 12 Steps and the Sacraments, A Catholic Journey Through Recovery, the title of a book that I never get wrong. I always get it right. Scott Wieman, welcome back.
It's a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you very much for being here. The holidays are wonderful and difficult, and I imagine that is particularly the case for those in recovery.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on in kind of the holidays can bring out the best in us, and the holidays can bring out the worst in us.
Right.
Opportunities, this time of year, we just are coming off of Thanksgiving weekend. I'm sure many people, listeners here, maybe had a joyous Thanksgiving. In some instances, it may have been challenging, when we're put in forced family environments, which good to be with family, but sometimes that can uproot some family conflict or expectations for ourselves and others.
Right.
And temptation. If the holiday festivities involve a lot of drinking or a lot of eating or a lot of other, mildly belligerent behavior, then, it can be a time where those who are seeking recovery, a new way of life, there's some temptation to go back to old behaviors, but also an opportunity to really redouble whether it's our recovery efforts, if we're seeking recovery from a variety of addictions, compulsions, or unhealthy attachments, or it's also really a great time for us to practice the principles of our faith and, be charitable and loving to each other. And, so that requires some preparation. Certainly Advent is a season of that. But, even before Advent and perhaps even considering Thanksgiving and all of these family festive gatherings, prudent for us to be at least prepared.
888-318-7884. If you yourself are in recovery or are facing addiction issues, you're very welcome to call. Maybe it's a family member you'd like to talk about, maybe just a coworker, a situation that you're in that you'd like Scott's help with. 888-318-7884. In addition to being an author, Scott is the founder of Catholic in Recovery. Tell us a little bit about Catholic in Recovery, Scott.
Yeah, Catholic in Recovery is a community of individuals and family members seeking freedom from addictions, compulsions, and unhealthy attachments. It was founded the website created in 2015, CatholicInRecovery.com. I was then given an opportunity to write a book, The 12 Steps and the Sacraments. And in that process, I was doing some local speaking here in San Diego, and did a 4-week series at the St. Joseph Cathedral, and brought together people who were seeking recovery from a variety of addictions, in recovery, family members impacted by a loved one's addiction. The best part of those talks was when I was done talking and other people had a chance to share through the lens of our faith, the sacraments, scripture, Catholic devotions, the things that would maybe otherwise be out of bounds in a secular 12-step recovery group. And it was clear we need to bring these people together on a regular basis. And so we started our first Catholic in Recovery group here in San Diego in January 2017.
Wow, 6 years, huh?
Yeah, it's been 6 years. And with the format...
almost 7, though.
Almost 7.
Yeah, almost 7. Yeah, wow.
A format that blends the sacramental life of the church with the 12 steps, 12-step wisdom. And from that one group, which, at the time I had no vision that it would grow to the way it has been, had never thought that I would be sitting next to Cy Kellett on Catholic Answers Live. But God has certainly, blessed the community in this effort. And now we have about 100 active Catholic in Recovery meetings around the country, around the world, a few in Canada, a few in Mexico, and host 50-plus
Wonderful.
virtual Catholic in Recovery meetings, weekend retreats hosted for individuals in recovery. We get people, the lovely thing, I see Catholic in Recovery as a bridge between the church and 12-step recovery groups or other recovery as well. We find people who have been sober for a long time coming to our community, offering a lot of great experience, strength, and hope around addiction recovery. And then, some have been away from the church for some time. A gentleman who leads a group or is active in a group in Sacramento, California, 48 years sober. But when his wife passed away about 6 or 7 years ago, he and his wife had been away from the church for quite some time. He was active in recovery from alcoholism, but had been away from that fellowship as well for some time. And when his wife passed, he just felt this inclination to come back to the church. The church was starting a Catholic in Recovery fellowship, and he got active and, just shares a wonderful, joyful life and wonderful experience, strength, and hope. We have others who have been in the church for quite some time, but perhaps dragging their feet on taking action around an addiction. And so we see Catholic in Recovery as a gateway into addiction recovery by blending what we know of our faith and the sacraments of the church and 12-step recovery.
888-318-7884 is the number, 888-318-7884. You want to talk about addiction and recovery from a Catholic perspective with Scott Wheatman, your call is welcome here. By the way, you don't have to be Catholic. There is tremendous wisdom in many of the 12-step programs that Scott is very familiar with, and in the whole Christian tradition that can be of help. And we'd love to have the conversation with you, whatever your background is or your present state in life is. 888-318-7884.
And you can be anonymous over the phone.
Yes, you can.
You can call
be
anonymously.
Anonymous. Yes. As a matter of fact, it's over the phone is one of the easiest ways to be anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 888-318-7884. Let me ask you a little bit about that. How is the church? How does Christianity, how does the Christian religion treat addiction? Think of addiction? Isn't it just sin? And are addicts really welcome in the church?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's a question.
You don't look like that's a good question. You look like that was a bad question.
No, I think that's that's a wonderful gateway into a great discussion around.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that people seek the church. People are longing for the church to be there to support them or a family member around addiction needs. And I think that really, certainly at the heart of the church efforts, the apostolic mission of the church is to serve the poor and the needy and the most vulnerable and the powerless. So the first step of addiction recovery, we admitted that we were powerless over fill in the blank: alcohol, drugs, lust, food, gambling, technology, another person, place, or thing, and that our lives had become unmanageable, which is, I think, really in the spirit of the Beatitudes as well. I hear, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." But there's a certain humility that's required to recognize our powerlessness. Oftentimes, change comes as a result of a lot of pain, perhaps our own pain, but also pain caused by others.
Right.
Usually, those are people that are closest to us: family members, community members, people who really care for us. Which is why addiction is. We'll discuss it as a family spiritual disease. No one is immune from the effects of an addiction, even if it's not your own. You're certainly impacted, and we see how a family system changes to oftentimes kind of keep the addiction active. It's almost the addiction that's calling the shots, if we can personify it in some ways.
Yeah.
And so we act a little bit contrary to what would be really within the sane. We act with insanity, and so I think that the spirit of serenity, sanity, and sobriety through the holidays is one that we can all capture, all maintain, whether we're in recovery or not. But there's a lot to that question. But to get back to your original question, the church embracing it, I think in varying degrees, but I also see that there are some perhaps myths that kind of rule the way of how we approach addiction or recovery within the church.
Oh, okay.
Oftentimes, there's a lot of stigma around addiction, that the presence of an addiction somehow is a personal referendum of who we are or who our family is.
Right.
And we act with a lot of fear, I think, and in addition, the spirit of recovery kind of moves freely. And I understand certainly there are certain things that we need to do to protect our church, so I think, like you mentioned, something that made me think of, we have, within a church, within a parish, for example, some policies that might require attendance. I've heard that parishes where every time that there's a gathering, they have to take attendance of who's going to be there, and that's kind of like a policy for a parish event to take place. And with addiction recovery, we can't take attendance. The spirit of anonymity is really important. And so, and I'm sure that there are some legal reasons why they want people's attendance and things like that. But, we just had to, in that instance, say we can't have a meeting at this spot if that's a requirement. So there are some varying elements or levels of the church of embracing and approaching. But, the more we go, the further that our community grows, the more I see the church embracing. And in fact, I got a phone call today that the Archbishop of Los Angeles is going to distribute 100 copies of my book, The 12 Steps in the Sacraments, to inmates in prisons at Christmas time. And so there are other instances where, bishops and Catholic leaders are really embracing this spirit of healing and through addiction recovery within our church. So I'm very hopeful.
I'm glad that you're hopeful, because I worry about us being, I'll tell you, part of what prompts the question is there's this famous person who I won't name who just kind of left a somewhat famous life of a libertine life to be baptized and become Christian. And she said, the most surprising thing to her was how bitter some Christians were about her coming in to the church. And I sometimes think we are like that the church is not for your kind of people, whatever that may be, that we're a little bit like the Pharisees when Jesus welcomes Matthew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the church can learn a lot from the principles of addiction recovery fellowships. Which is part of why, Catholic in Recovery was started. My life was saved by the 12 steps in the 12-step fellowship.
Right.
And I found salvation through the church. I wouldn't have gotten to the church if it wasn't for sobriety and recovery. And it's only God that keeps me sober. So there's these two beautiful pillars that are, kind of coexisting that can certainly learn from each other.
Yes.
And so that's, falling in love with the Catholic Church. I've recognized where we can lean into, the spirit of community and healing and humility and that.
Scott Wiemann is our guest. There's a few folks on the line. There's 3 lines open. If you want to talk about addiction and recovery from a Catholic perspective, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. If you are if you're watching on the video, do not be afraid. That is not a Civil War general. That is Scott Wiemann. He just grew a very fancy beard. Right back with your calls for Scott right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN is now on Twitter. Get short, timely messages from EWTN on your computer or cell phone. It's easy to stay up to date on a wide variety of topics. Pro-life news, Vatican announcements, catechesis, apologetics, the latest EWTN programming, and more. You can link to EWTN on Twitter from our homepage or go to twitter.com/EWTN. At work, at home, at school, and on the road. Stay connected to your world with EWTN's Twitter page.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Still a couple lines open if you want to talk about addiction and recovery from a Catholic perspective. We're heading into Advent. We just celebrated the feast of Christ, the King of the Universe, yesterday, which means next Sunday we begin the new liturgical year, the Advent season. And as beautiful and wonderful as that is, that also provides us with lots of temptations and sometimes frustrations and upsets, and all of which can be activating for our various disabilities and shortcomings and all that, and addiction certainly part of that. So if you'd like to call and get some help or ask a question or share your story, you're welcome to talk with our good friend Scott Wiemann, the founder of Catholic in Recovery, 888-318-7884. Mary's in Minnesota, listening on 1280 AM. Welcome, Mary. Go ahead with your question for Scott.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't really have a question. I just want to tell my story of my addiction. Quickly, I'm 69 years old. I have 7 kids. I was cradle Catholic, been Catholic all my life. I had an eating disorder, bulimia, for 45 years, and I tried getting over it, tried everything I could think of, kind of got over it, but towards the end, the last few years, I would still have slip-ups for the past, 3 or 4 during the year. And I finally had a religious experience. We were in Israel, and we were in a church, and I saw a statue of Mary, and I went and kneeled in front of it, and all of a sudden her face came to life, and I had to look away because she looked absolutely horrified. And for 2 years, I thought it was about something else. It couldn't have been about me, blah, blah, blah. But what I realized 2 years later was it was about me, and how much my sin of choosing to continue was hurting her by hurting her son. And after that experience and after the realization, I've not had any slip-ups for the past 3, 4, 5 years. I don't know how long it's been, but Thanksgiving and all the holidays it's a trigger for that kind of addiction. So I stay away, just for everybody listening, I stay away from the trigger foods. I just don't eat them anymore. I don't care if people try to push it on me. And I live a much healthier lifestyle, and I love the Catholic Church, and I feel like that experience really finally helped me get over it.
Mary, let's hear what Scott has to say.
Yeah, praise God. Thank you for sharing your story, Mary. And what a gift, that kind of just a revelation. That's truly something that's remarkable. And one of the things that I've found since starting Catholic in Recovery, and I've said it a few times already today, addictions, compulsions, and unhealthy attachments. These manifest in various ways. I see them as different symptoms of the same spiritual malady. Could be related to alcohol, drugs, food, either overeating or restricted eating, in the case what Mary's discussing. Certainly lust, pornography, gambling, technology, etc. I could list a long list of things that are largely different symptoms of the same spiritual malady. When she's referring to triggering foods, I think she's referring to sugar and flour, which in a lot of ways can activate a craving, or also, for those who restrict, can do different things as well. And so, she's found that I appreciate abstinence from some things. I'm curious, Mary, can you tell us a little bit more about just how are the holidays different for you now, I guess, compared to what it used to be like?
Oh, well, all in all, I feel free. It's every day I feel free. It's completely the most wonderful life after being in that addiction, which you feel like you're in a cage that you can never change, but you can change. I think one thing I thought was, why bother trying? It got so long, so many years, and whatever the reasons for, that's really not important. I think it's just something that I knew that I had to choose, and I also knew I didn't really want to quit because I didn't want to get fat. That's how an eating disorder person thinks. You don't want to get fat. You don't want to give up this way of life because you're so afraid for whatever reason not to get fat. And I am free from that now, and I control myself. I can't just eat anything I want, but I do eat, and I actually stick to a really healthy diet. And
Mary,
it's not really a diet; it's a lifestyle. Yeah.
What a wonderful call. Thank you very, very much. I thank you so much for the call. I want to ask Scott, how often do you hear something like, I was trying, but I didn't really want it? There's kind of almost a spiritual difference between the person who, kind of wants it, but the person who's ready to say, now I want it.
Yeah, that's... I think of the prayer of St. Augustine, Lord, make me chaste, but not yet.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's certainly, a lot of what Mary actually then unfolded after she said that was that it was fear that drove her to stay almost in that cave that she's discussing.
Yeah. Right.
In the cage or the cave, and it just not locked up, enslaved.
Yeah.
And so, part of the 12 steps is really uncovering what are those fears so that we can replace them with faith and different types of, both attitudes and behaviors, because it can be it's very common for people, particularly with food-related addictions, to kind of just give up. And like she mentioned, been at this for 45 years. And, in some ways just thought it's never going to come my way, or I'm just going to be always enslaved. This is biblical. This is the story of the Egyptians who were enslaved, who on the road to freedom, were getting fed up, and they almost were happy let's go back and be enslaved again.
Right.
And so we have to fight against sometimes these urges, and they comes. Addiction manifests, whether it's alcohol, drugs, food, lust, technology, behavior, or substance, biologically, cognitively or mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And it takes time for those to heal themselves. We have to take action. It's not just time that heals those things. Mary sounds like had a white light experience almost through the Virgin Mary, and that's not the case for everyone. And so, I hope that other listeners are hearing, don't give up.
Just
keep pursuing God, and He's going to be there right by your side. And oftentimes it takes pain, or the pain is greater than the fear. Then we take new action. And so and that window of grace, though, for action doesn't last forever. It's a window of grace where we have the opportunity to take an action that we otherwise wouldn't, connect or ask for help. Asking for help, through prayer and through other people, something that we can all use a little bit more of.
Mary, thank you. Again, our guest is Scott Weeman, the founder of Catholic in Recovery. You can find it at catholicinrecovery.com. They have the Catholic in Recovery workbook, a guide to the 12 steps. And you're very welcome to call if you have a question you'd just like to ask Scott now on the air, 888-318-7884. I will remind you that Scott said it's perfectly fine to call and be anonymous. We're happy to take your call. Let's go to Sue in Oklahoma, listening on 100.9 FM. Sue, awful glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Scott Weeman.
Well, thank you. My question was really about how to start a program here in Oklahoma. But as listening to people, I am in a 12-step program, and I'm 11 months sober. But what I'm hearing is my other addictions are still there. I quit smoking cigarettes years ago, but now I'm vaping instead. And I started that when I gave up the alcohol. And for years had a food addiction, and I still find that as a part. And when I overeat, I throw it out because I feel lousy. I mean, I just feel like I have to. Yeah. So as I'm listening to you, I'm like, man, I really haven't overcome my addiction.
Well, let's get a response from Scott, and then I'll come back to you, Sue.
Thank you for calling, Sue. Alcohol in itself is cunning, baffling, and powerful. And if you have found freedom from that, then I think that is worth praising God for.
Amen.
When it was, I came, I'm an all the above kind of an addict. Mm-hmm. If it brings power, pleasure, honor, or wealth, which St. Thomas Aquinas says are the four things we pursue in place of God, I want more of it. We have a disease of more, and one is too many and 1,000 is not enough. I could go on with some cliches that describe my condition and our shared condition. Sometimes people come to Catholic in Recovery and they say something kind of like what Sue just mentioned, which, I realize that I have more addictions now than when I got here, which, perhaps that's just being, starting to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah, but that's the same thing people say about confession. I started going to confession, and now I feel like I've got more sins, because you start to be sensitive to the fact that when you're insensitive, you just miss all this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's also a human element where we have a tendency to want to just avoid that or escape or run away. A lot of our groups, especially our in-person groups, we have a variety of meetings every day that are suited for different types of addictions, compulsions, and unhealthy attachments family members impacted by a loved one's addiction, different prayer and meditation groups. But many of our groups are general recovery groups, so people with a variety of addictions gathering together. And that really provides a holistic approach to recovery, because there can be, which we just heard a few examples of, where we might give up one addictive behavior or substance but replace it for another. And that is not, maybe there's some progress there if it's a less life-threatening addiction.
Yeah, you can say that.
But there's still opportunity for spiritual growth.
Right.
Where we want a spiritual awakening, where we're relying upon God, not different behaviors and substances in order to be well.
Sue, what do you think?
I agree, and I do feel like spiritually I've grown through the program. I was born and raised Catholic, and I will always be a Catholic, and always had faith in God. My biggest thing was I never gave my will ever to God.
Yep.
And that's what I'm really working on through the program is, like, you got to give your will up. And I can do that in some ways and not others. Oops, I hear you're
but that's the story of the spiritual life right there.
Yeah, thank you for the call.
God bless you. Thank you so much for the call. 888-318-7884.
Is relativism dead? It sure seems dead. Each day, new moral demands are made, and they are presented to us as absolutes. Everything, from transgender ideology to physician-assisted suicide, is presented as a moral good that all right-thinking people must accept. But Catholic Answers' own Carlo Broussard says look deeper, and you will see today's moralism is just relativism dressed up in new clothes. Carlo's eye-opening book, The New Relativism, shines a light on how the sacred moral teachings of this age cover up a deep denial of moral truth. Order your copy of The New Relativism today at shop.catholic.com and be prepared to defend the truth against aggressive relativism. The New Relativism at shop.catholic.com, or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
In These 12, The Gospel Through the Apostles' Eyes, best-selling author Rod Bennett gives a riveting re-examination of gospel events from the ground floor perspective of Christ's own hand-picked successors. In his trademark storytelling style, Bennett movingly depicts what it was like for the apostles to witness Jesus' teaching and miracles up close. Why did he call them, and what did he intend for them to do? Order your copy of These 12 today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Scott Wieman is our guest, the founder of Catholic in Recovery, discussing our beards during the break. Why are we hiding behind these beards? There's no answer to that one. 888-318-7884, the number if you want to talk about addiction and recovery from a Catholic perspective. You have an issue yourself, issue in the family, just any issue, you're welcome to call. And you don't have to be Catholic to call. You want to talk about addiction and recovery, we are happy to do it. I'm sure Scott is happy to do it. 888-318-7884. Let's go to Sacramento, California now. Cameron is listening on the Catholic Answers app. Cameron, thanks for downloading the app onto your phone. Go ahead with your question for Scott Wieman.
Hi, guys. Quick little background. I was raised in the church, did the whole deal, baptized, communion, confirmed, all that. Long story short, I kind of walked away from the church during my teenage years, which led into me falling into alcoholism and other drug addictions. I'm grateful to say that I now have almost 6 years of sobriety due to the 12-step program. The question I have for you, Scott, is when did you start Catholics in Recovery? Because I think that's fantastic. I see a lot of Celebrate Recovery, which is kind of like the Protestant version of that. Those little flags hanging around town out here in Sacramento. But I haven't heard of this before, and I was just really curious as to where and when you started that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for calling. Praise God for 6 years or nearly 6 years of recovery. That's awesome. And so I started Catholic in Recovery. I got sober here in San Diego in 2011. And as a result, came back to the church. Your story sounds a lot like mine in that regard. And, it was through the miracle of my sobriety that I really knew and met God, and grew up Catholic, although fell away from the church in my teenage years, and, found my way back to the church. And then in 2015, I began a website, CatholicInRecovery.com, really just sharing some experience, strength, and hope related to addiction recovery in the church. I saw that there was an opportunity for the church to learn in some ways from addiction recovery fellowships, and also that there were many people in those fellowships who were longing for a deeper relationship with their higher power, and could be a bridge or a gateway to the church, back to the church in some instances, or to the church for the first time. I began participating in RCIA, not I was actually envious of those who were going through the sacraments as adults, because I kind of just went through the motions as a kid. And then I recognized through a lot of great counsel, both in people who were mentoring me in the church and in recovery, the similarities between the 12 steps and the sacramental life of the church, and really the sacraments of initiation and healing. And as they overlap with the 12 steps, saw that as I was working through the 12 steps, I was engaging in a lot of the same spiritual behaviors and milestones, and we have both sponsors in the church and in recovery, and there's a lot of similarities. And so I didn't envision that it would lead to a worldwide community, and grateful that it has. And I've learned a lot along the way. But yeah, we began our first meeting in January 2017, and it's grown quite a bit since then.
What do you think, Cameron?
Well, right on. I think that's fantastic, man. Because I just recently came back to the church, within the last year. I think there is a change in how people like Scott and I are perceived. When I first came back and did my first confession in, what was probably 22 years, that was a laundry list of things. But my priest at my parish, he understood. And what he did is, he asked me if I went through AA, and I went through the 12 steps, and that kind of took it down to where, hey, he understands me. And I think that a program like Catholic Recovery is a great way for us to evangelize for the Catholic faith even. Mm-hmm. I think it's great because, getting people in the door to AA is what, saved my life, like I said earlier. But, you have people in there that are claiming their higher power is a doorknob, Yeah, and you probably heard that, Scott. You know what I mean? And if we could get people into, say, Catholic in Recovery, then maybe there's hope for them to see who God really is. And that's really all I got to say, man. So thanks for creating that. I'm going to look into it, man. I think that's great. And thank you for taking my call, guys.
Thank you, Cameron. God bless you. CatholicInRecovery.com is the place that you can go.
And check out in Carmichael, California, just I think a little bit west of you, Our Lady the Assumption has a Catholic in Recovery fellowship there as well.
It does seem to me like that what Cameron said about that things are changing is true. I think I do think Catholic in Recovery is something that can kind of further that change, so that we're not resistant to the person who is suffering with an addiction, or the family that's suffering with an addiction, or the spouse or whatever, child, but that we are the place where those people feel they can find healing and peace and love and acceptance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's a lot that we can do. I want to clarify this too. It's important to note that we don't claim to be a substitute for other 12-step groups related to either alcohol, drugs, food, lust, you name it, but rather supplemental too. And as Cameron mentioned, that's kind of a similar vision. He mentioned Celebrate Recovery, which is a Protestant organization that started in Orange County at Rick Warren Saddleback Church about 30 years ago. And they have now, I think, 30,000 Celebrate Recovery groups around the world, and in many places are the evangelical arm of those churches. And we lose a lot of Catholics. A lot of Catholics go there.
Right. You would think if you find a group that shares your Christian faith and provides that peace and healing that you've been looking for, and the community you've been looking for, you might be drawn towards that.
Absolutely. Especially if maybe they were, someone's referred to a secular 12-step group by their pastor, which saved my life and continues to save my life. But in some instances, there might be some anti-Catholic sentiment shared in those meetings, which, we are not immune to. And there may be some people who are referring to their higher power as a doorknob or a soccer ball or something along those lines, and, a spiritual program. But so someone there might be, I don't know, wonder if this is for them or in alignment with their faith. Catholic in Recovery kind of shares the blend of the traditions of our faith and the 12 steps of recovery. Yeah, I think that, people are seeking in these desperate times sometimes new life, God, and we can provide that.
Praise God. Cameron, thank you very, very much. Again, CatholicInRecovery.com is where anybody can go to get information on Catholic in Recovery. Scott Wieman is our guest. He's the founder of Catholic in Recovery and the founder of, and I always get the title of the book exactly correct, so I want to say it in exactly the correct way. The 12 Steps in the Sacraments, A Catholic Journey Through Recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Did that seem like I was looking through my notes?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Phil's in Kansas City, Missouri. That's the good Kansas City. That's what everybody tells me.
Okay.
You're not getting involved in that. I don't know anything about that. Listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Phil, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Scott Wieman.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for the program. That really sparked my interest back in the faith several years ago. But for Scott, I've got an adult son who's an alcoholic. He thankfully has like 11 months sobriety now. He's approaching his 1-year anniversary. But the nugget that I'm hoping to get from you guys is our relationship is very transactional right now. He only calls me when he needs something from me. Hey, Dad, can I spend the night with you and bring my son over with me? And hey, Dad, I need a couple $100. I manage his funds for him, so we need to have that conversation, obviously. But everything else, it's just we don't talk about anything other than whatever transaction he needs me to perform for him. So, what ideas would you have for me?
Yeah, thanks for calling, Phil. I'm curious how engaged in the recovery process have you been? His recovery.
Well, I have been through all of the stuff. I enabled him for a while. Certainly did that, but I also had to make the hard choice and kick him out of a cabin that I used to own, and basically put him out on the street. And that's where he finally found a program that he's in. And he's being very successful. So, I've done my best, I feel, to try to help him along the way. If that helps.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think just like he is healing from alcoholism or an addiction, the whole family, it sounds like, is in need of healing. And, it's not just an overnight thing. This is really why, we describe addiction as a family spiritual disease. And, it sounds like you recognized maybe where you had gotten caught up in that. And as a parent of an adult child, I can't imagine how challenging it might be to see someone's life kind of collapsing or falling apart right in front of you. And, with the natural inclination of asking, what can I do to help? Unfortunately, as you've probably learned through some trial and error, addiction isn't something that we can manage ourselves. And perhaps, as you probably have learned, you are powerless over alcohol just as much as Phil is. And maybe not in your own intake or other ways, but certainly his use. And so it sounds like, the relationship probably for a while had to be transactional, or almost the nature of the relationship in his addiction and the family disease of addiction was formed to be transactional. And, it's going to take some time for that to overcome. But I think just even taking and expressing an interest in some of the things that he's doing and, just being his dad. I think for a while we fall into, and this is very, very natural, but the therapist in me is going to come out for a moment here. But as in a family unit, we develop kind of roles within the family in order to help the identified patient in the family. For this, in this instance, your son maybe have kind of taken that role of identified patient, and maybe you've taken the role for a while of like his healing, kind of like his caretaker, and so. He doesn't need a caretaker right now, and just, you know this, but I'm sure that praise God that he's finding help and has found help, and I would imagine has some healthy relationships around him, and is probably going through a lot of what many of us go through, and kind of learning how to adjust our playmates and our playgrounds in recovery, and so the family can learn through that. And I would just give yourself time, give him time. You could also learn a lot, though, perhaps from participating in a family recovery group. Al-Anon is one of those groups. There are a variety of Catholic in Recovery family and friends groups, meetings that take place. And whether the person in your family is in the midst of addiction or has found recovery from addiction, this is something that allows the whole family system to heal. Not so that you're taking ownership. You didn't cause, cure, nor can you control his addiction, his alcoholism, but you can certainly perhaps even learn new ways to find a new relationship with your son. Certainly he's kind of on the verge of this spiritual awakening, and as a father, I imagine you want to be right there with him, but don't know how. So, I think that as he's going to mature emotionally and spiritually, I'll just, perhaps ask him. I don't know. That's a lot of just rambling and thoughts, not rambling, but some, certainly some guided thoughts. But any of that land for you, Phil?
A little bit. I guess maybe I want things to happen faster than they are, and that's probably my big takeaway here is just to let the time heal the wounds. So, and that's one of those things you don't want to hear, especially as a father that has dealt with this for the better part of 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Phil, I'll say one more thing.
Okay.
One more thing, Phil, as someone who wishes that I had a better relationship with my father, and maybe he's afraid to say the thing that's hard to say, and maybe he's reaching out at times of need, but I can't imagine that he's not thinking about you or longing for a better relationship outside of those moments. And so do what you can one day at a time, but be patient with him, be patient with yourself, and be patient with God.
Phil, thank you very, very much. If you'd like to check out the website, CatholicInRecovery.com, CatholicInRecovery.com. Our guest is Scott Weeman, the founder of CatholicInRecovery.com. It's something we started doing several years ago with Scott at holiday time. It seemed appropriate to holiday time, but it's become more regular than that. Every couple months or few months, I don't know, every 2 or 3 months, we see you and we get to do this show. So your opportunity to talk about addiction and recovery from a Catholic perspective, whether you're ministering in a parish or a family or a marriage or all by yourself, maybe it's your addiction you want to talk about, somebody else's, you are welcome to call. Yeah, I want to say it again, too. You don't have to be Catholic to call. You want to talk about addiction and recovery? 888-318-7884.
I think someone from Oklahoma called in earlier, and their original question was, how do I get a Catholic in Recovery group started?
Yeah.
We never answered that question, although maybe you did by saying go to CatholicInRecovery.com. But if anyone is interested in either participating in a virtual Catholic in Recovery meeting happening every day, or getting a new Catholic in Recovery group started, or finding an in-person meeting near you, all those resources are available on our website. And we would love to support you in growing a fellowship in your community.
And how many groups now, right now?
We have about 100 active in-person meetings and 50 virtual meetings.
So do it. The more it grows, the more it can share the faith with people and bring that healing to so many people, including to the church, to all those who come to the church, but to the church in general. We need that healing. So check it out at CatholicInRecovery.com. We'll take a quick break. Be right back with more calls for Scott Weeman on Catholic Answers Live.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
I just want to share that 5 years ago, my lovely warrior princess and saint of a wife and I decided to adopt a little girl through foster care. She is the perfect roundout of our family of 3 boys and her. Yes, there are challenges. Very grateful today for all the blessings that he has shown our family.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest, good friend Scott Weeman from right here in Southern California, the founder of Catholic in Recovery. It's been a great gift to us to have Scott over the years come in and talk about addiction and recovery with us. And if you've got a question, if you want to have a conversation with Scott, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. However, Scott, before I go to the phones, I have to read this ad with great enthusiasm.
Yeah, let's get it.
So if it's long, though. Look at all this. So if it gets boring, if you get tired of it, just kind of make a signal and I'll move on to the next thing.
Okay.
Do you know what today is? It's Cyber Monday. And here at Catholic Answers, we're very excited to announce our Cyber Monday $10 book sale. More than 50 books to choose from, our very newest and best-selling titles from your very favorite authors. Visit our $10 book sale category and shop away at shop.catholic.com. There's a lot more. Do you want me to just wrap it up, or are you enjoying this?
Can I finish it?
Oh, yes. Here, just do the last 2 lines there.
All right.
That'll do it.
Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com today and get your tickets. Today only, promo code Cyber Monday saves you $75.
Well, he's good, huh? Do you want to guest host the show sometime?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Emma in Hayden, Idaho. Emma, we're awful glad you're here. We're glad you're here every time you're here, Emma. Go ahead with your question for Scott.
Thank you, Cy. Well, I wanted to talk about how fragile sobriety is.
Okay.
I have 14 years, and when we just got back from a trip from Costa Rica, we were gone almost a month. I'm not kidding you. I had a drinking dream like every 3 days.
Oh. Okay.
And that sent me for a loop. When I think I've got the tools under my belt and I'm all safe and secure, it's not that safe and secure. And I think we really have to guard ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Scott?
Amen.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So to fill Cy in and maybe others, sometimes we get these dreams that are like recall dreams, or as Emma described, a dream where you're drinking. She hasn't taken a drink in over 14 years, yet she has a drink. And that can be a little bit alarming. We might wake up with like, whoa, like, what was that? When our sobriety is paramount in our lives. Mm-hmm. And so that's the fragility of our sobriety is a great discussion point. And, whether you have 10 days of sobriety, 10 months of sobriety, 10 years of sobriety, several decades of sobriety, we each have today. And there's something that's, we are all on an equal playing field in recovery. Addiction does not discriminate, nor does our solution. So whether rich or poor, regardless of ethnicity or gender or even vocational status, addiction does not discriminate. It's a great equalizer.
What do you think about that, Emma, first of all?
I couldn't have said that better myself. So
well, that's why he's the founder. Emma, thanks. I appreciate it. But
can I ask, Emma, what is your, you said that you were gone for about a month. What are some of the things, the routines that help you maintain that one day at a time sobriety?
Read my book.
You mean the big book?
I went to 3, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to 3 meetings.
There you go.
2 of them were in Spanish, so I speak Spanish, but they were just like, I couldn't follow along.
Mm-hmm. But I bet you got a lot out of it. Just like when we travel the world, we can find Catholic churches everywhere, and it may not even be in the same language, but we still know what's going on. We can participate. the same thing is beautiful. Recovery is happening around the globe. And, we can travel and still have fellowship with us. And there's a kinship there, much like when we find some fellow Catholics, the kinship among fellow brothers and sisters in recovery is awesome. And, we may share very few other similarities other than the fact that we desperately need God and each other one day at a time in order to stay sober, abstinent, clean, balanced, however you define your recovery.
Emma, thank you. Thanks very, very much. The number here is 888-318-7884. We're talking about addiction and recovery with Scott Wieman, the founder of Catholic in Recovery. CatholicInRecovery.com is the place to use, the place to visit to find out more. Go ahead, Scott.
And I'll say this, is that this time of year, the holidays, we're approaching Advent beginning Sunday. We just came off of Thanksgiving weekend, which may have found some, heightened family conflict or just, difficult conversations that we otherwise aren't having during our day. It's a great time to be really doubling down on our recovery efforts and our faith practice efforts. So, I would say that if you follow this, kind of 5-step formula, which this was shared by a fellow Catholic in Recovery member. We had a webinar last week. Members of CIR Plus Premium can find the archive of a lot of resources, webinars, and things like that. But the theme, serenity, sanity, and sobriety through the holidays. If you do these 5 things, which are really things that we can do every day, but during this time we double down our efforts. Wake up in the morning and ask God to keep you sober this day. Read some recovery literature, which Emma just referred to, making that a part of your day. That could also include the Bible, Scripture. This is not just for those in recovery, by the way. You'll find that these things helpful. Go to a meeting each day. Talk to another person in recovery. And then thank God for keeping you sober before you go to bed at night. You do those 5 things, and it sounds like that's a recipe for a good day.
888-318-7884, the number. I want to ask you about this. You're a Catholic group, I can tell, because it's called Catholic in Recovery. Mm-hmm. So do you observe the seasons of the year? Will there be special Advent things that you're going to be doing, Christmas things, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. We had, like I mentioned, kind of a pre-full holiday season, winter holiday webinar last week. You can access that, and we're going to have every Sunday of Advent. We're going to have a Advent candle lighting ceremony among our communities. So this is a virtual event via Zoom that people can invite their family members to, and light your Advent candle together with a little reflection on the theme of the week: peace, hope, love, and joy and love. And we'll have a few webinars during the Advent season as well. And then that will conclude. Advent is as short as it can be this year. The 4th Sunday of Advent is Christmas Eve. And so we'll have a Christmas marathon meeting beginning Christmas Eve during the day, and that will extend for about 36 hours. We'll have a 36-hour-long meeting. So if anyone is in need during the holidays, particularly Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, finding fellowship, it's just a click away. CatholicInRecovery.com will have a running virtual marathon meeting with people present and committed to being there at all hours of the day.
Well, Scott, I want to say thanks. Thanks very much for coming in and talking this through with us. Christ himself is a healer, and and this is something the church really needs to rediscover, is her role in the person of Christ to be a healer in the world.
Mm-hmm. Amen. And I see the body of Christ healing the body of Christ through Christ every single day, and it's amazing to see families reuniting, to see people experience the freedom that a few callers described earlier.
Right.
You can't beat it.
And that's the thing, is I really liked that call. I liked all the calls today, and I'm grateful for them. But the woman who called from Oklahoma, because there is a way in which we can think, oh yeah, Christ is a healer and all that, but not for me. Like we feel excluded from it. We feel defeated by our own sins, but also by our own just habits and inclinations, compulsions, addictions, all of that. We feel defeated by it sometimes.
Absolutely. It can drive us to hopelessness. And that gift of hope, not tangible, we don't talk about it too much, but hope is such an incredible gift. And I hope that all the listeners find it this holiday season.
So what do you advise if someone says, hey, I want to maintain my sobriety, or I want to get sober this holiday season. I want to do it now.
Get to a meeting every day. Ask God to put people in your life that will help you find that freedom that you're looking for. Commit to reading recovery literature, and ask and thank God every day for keeping you sober. We have resources at CatholicInRecovery.com, CIR Plus, a variety of communal events, but make it a community thing. Find others who have found freedom from the addiction that you're seeking freedom from, and in turn that will strengthen you both.
Scott's book is The 12 Steps and the Sacraments, A Catholic Journey Through Recovery. Also, you can get the Catholic in Recovery workbook at catholicinrecovery.com. If you are in recovery, if you are seeking recovery, check them out at catholicinrecovery.com. Scott, you're frightening with the giant beard, but inside, what a gem you are.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, thanks very much. And thanks for making this a tradition here at the holidays. Coming up, Father Tad Paholczyk on bioethics. Your questions welcome. Right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. So happy to get to be here on a Monday. It's always nice to get going again on Monday. A full week of shows for you this week, and all through the holidays, we try to have a new one for you every day. We'll try to have a new one for you every day this month. Even the what's December 8th? The Immaculate Conception. Even on the days that are church feasts, we're going to have new shows for you all month. This hour, Father Tad Pacholczyk, our guest. Father Tad, of course, the Director of Education for the National Catholic Bioethics Center. The National Catholic Bioethics Center in Pennsylvania is one of those wonderful places in the world where you can find the very best Catholic work being done on ethics, on medical ethics, bioethics, all those issues. And if you have a bioethics question, maybe you work in the bioethics field, maybe you're dealing with a family situation, a beginning of life situation, an end of life situation, disability or disease or treatment issues all throughout life, and you'd like a Catholic perspective on that, Father Tad is the guy to talk to. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Lots of people tell us that when they have a question about the Catholic faith that they have trouble answering, they just send people to us at Catholic Answers because we've got that, thousands and thousands of issues that we have dealt with over the years. Well, I can tell you that when we get ethics questions that we are not prepared to handle, we just send people to the National Catholic Bioethics Center, and that's not once or twice. That's quite a regular thing to do. Father Tad Pacholczyk, thank you very much for being here with us.
Great to join you, Cy. Thanks for having me on.
So anything new in the world of bioethics, or it's all pretty much stopped, right? They've stopped all the advances, and you're out of work, basically. Is that where we are now?
Don't I wish, I mean, I tell you, that's such a fast-moving area,
Right.
I forget if last time we talked about the synthetic embryos.
We did, yeah.
Yes, and I keep getting questions from people about those, and then the whole transgender thing has continued to be, a point of contact with a lot of people and a point of concern. So it's just never a dull moment. I tell people, years ago I was speaking a lot on embryonic stem cells, and nobody really has much interest in that anymore. We've shifted gears into all these other areas, and I'm sure 5 years from now it's going to look very different as well.
Right, because they're coming up with new things all the time. I mean, I have one that I want to ask you about, and you hear about it with Elon Musk. He's got this company where they're going to integrate technology into people's brains, but he's not the only one doing it. Other people are doing it. It's just that he's the most famous person probably involved in it. What are the ethical considerations? I mean, if you say 5 years from now it'll be something else, I think this is one candidate for something that it will be, is these brain implants that people want to do. What are the things we should be thinking about now so that we're prepared when these ethical issues come up a few years from now?
Yeah, I think you're right that one is definitely on the horizon. And I think there are a number of issues there. So this issue of having something implanted into your brain that will enable for signals to be transmitted into your brain, and also for these things potentially to read output from your brain. So as you can imagine, this could be a very powerful data collection system, which would tell you quite a bit about, what's going on in somebody's brain. And that raises a lot of privacy concerns, similar to the confidentiality that we have around medical data today. And I think those same types of rules and concerns are going to be at play very much there, and need to be safeguarded. That, this data, we worry about our medical data being sold to Google or sold to the highest bidder, and I think it's going to be similar to this, that this type of data will be collected on chips, and it'll be possible when you go visit your doctor, much like somebody who has a diabetes pump today, their data can be downloaded off of that into the computer system at the doctor's office, and then you never know where it goes after that. So that's one concern.
I hadn't thought about that at all. Yeah, I think my dad has an internal heart monitor that his pillow reads and sends the heart information to his doctor. I hadn't thought about it. You don't want people reading your brain while you're sleeping.
Absolutely, or while you're awake.
Well, yeah, right.
You know? I mean, I think that's definitely a concern. Now, there are other things, too. I mean, as you start putting grids of wires into the brain, the question of, how will you be able to affect the functioning of the brain? For example, can you induce mood changes? I suspect that with time that will be possible. And, I think there will be the possibility for either using that therapeutically, like if somebody is depressed, then you might have a new tool, but then you have to be careful. Will this also be a way to kind of get high, like a drug?
Oh, man.
Yeah, so this is another area of concern. And, even could this be hooked kind of into the sexual circuitry, that we're all wired with, and be abused in that way? Many concerns. And, I mean, there's so much about the brain that is not known, and we're still quite early in the entire process of figuring out whether these types of brain-computer interfaces, as they're called, BCIs, whether they're going to, be able to have this kind of functionality. But I think with time, it's going to be more and more sophisticated and more invasive, and that's definitely a point of concern. There's this old distinction between therapy and enhancement. And therapy, really, the church has always been very, appreciative and open and encouraging whenever you can have a real therapy that helps somebody who's sick. That's just what Jesus did. It's part of what we're about, healing.
Right.
But enhancement is kind of a different ballgame. This is, could you do things in the brain that would make people behave differently, be stronger, maybe be better soldiers and better warriors by, controlling their thoughts and things like that? That's going in a whole nother direction that has a set of ethical concerns that I think are quite significant.
Wow, man. This is why we need you, because I do think that some of those things you mentioned, I wouldn't have even begun to think about. I'm sure, I just want to say this, I'm sure that Elon Musk can be completely trusted with all of my brain data. I'm only saying that because he controls everything and I'm terrified of him. But
I'm with you. I tell you, he's really influential, and we do have to keep an eye on him.
Yeah, we do. You should have a whole department at the National Catholic Bioethics Center, just the Elon wing, where you just, what's Elon up to? Because, this is the thing, is that this is what I appreciate about what you do, too. It's not condemnatory. It's discerning, that you're not trying to say, hey, all of these advances are bad or dangerous, but you are trying to discern what are the bad and dangerous aspects of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really the key. Just to give you one more practical angle on this, the way that Elon is thinking of doing this, from what I understand, is maybe to have something like a sophisticated sewing machine that would, sort of penetrate your skull and put in this wiring system into your brain. And, it's going to be very delicately connected to a bunch of neurons at different parts of your brain. And there are going to be practical things like, well, what happens if you get into a car accident and your brain shifts position quickly and these wires are in there, or you're playing tackle football, and you get a hard knock to the head. You can see that there's just some purely practical kinds of concerns in terms of risk-benefit that we got to make sure we also think about those and deal with those in a sane fashion.
Our guest is Father Tad Pacholczyk, the Director of Education for the National Catholic Bioethics Center. If you have questions that you'd like a bioethicist to deal with, you're welcome. Questions beginning, middle, or end of life, big social, scientific issues, or particular issues to a case in the family, it's all welcome. 888-318-7884.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
There is tremendous power in prayer because when we acknowledge that we don't have the power, but God does, things then begin to move for our good. Remember Matthew 19:26. But Jesus looked at them and said to them, "With men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible." Now that's power.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking bioethics with Father Tad Pacholczyk from the National Catholic Bioethics Center. And I messed up this ad last hour because I was goofing around, so let me get it right. We've got a Cyber Monday deal on tickets for next year's Catholic Answers Conference. Join Scott and Kimberly Hahn, Dr. Ray Garendi, Father Sebastian Walsh, and all your favorite Catholic Answers folks to talk about the parables, sermons, and conversations of Jesus Christ. You can find out all about it at CatholicAnswersConference.com. Today, if you get your tickets and use the promo code Cyber Monday, you save $75. Holy smokes, $75 off your Catholic Answers Conference tickets at CatholicAnswersConference.com today until midnight Honolulu time, CatholicAnswersConference.com. Father Tad Pacholczyk, an expert in bioethics, and welcome to take, we're ready to take your calls. We'll start with Joseph in California. Joseph, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question for Father Tad.
Father Tad, I thank you so much. My wife and I received a text a few weeks ago from our son in his late 20s informing us that he was a trans person and was, had been taking female hormones for a while now. You can imagine, what it's done, and I'm just wanting to, I guess, get your views on how a mother and father that really, did not see this coming, but certainly, is now going through things and, trying to struggle to figure out how we can best support our son. We've spoken with him a few times on the phone, and then we're able to spend a few days with him over the Thanksgiving, in which we really didn't discern that it was time to, try to sort all these things out, and was just a chance to just show him our love and acceptance and whatnot. And I think that went well, but we need some help. We need some wisdom. He lives in an area of the country, in fact, Pennsylvania area, where I've heard that as many as almost one in, or like maybe 10% of the high school students are identifying now as trans, maybe 8%, something like that, and it's truly incredible. So that's my call, Father.
Well, Joseph, that's an amazing question, a hard question, as you're pointing out. When it broadsides a family, I have, spoken with other families in similar situations, and I think from what you've described so far about your initial reaction and your initial approach, that you're seeking to keep the lines of communication open with your son, and that's very important. That's a tricky one because I think you're going to have to do this kind of step by step with some discernment, with a lot of prayer and reflection, sort of trying to see where your son really is. And, gauging carefully when you can say certain things and when you cannot. Because I think sometimes, this type of an occurrence, when it goes off in the middle of a family, it's something like a bomb going off, and you sometimes want to react more strongly than perhaps one should, rather than sort of taking an approach of saying, well, we've got to be patient here, we've got to be willing to journey with our son, we've got to accompany him, But at the same time, be ready for those moments of grace because you are his parents. You are going to have some opportunities with God's help to, speak the truth in love. And, those moments, you'll have to see a little bit kind of how it goes with time, but to be open to those. I think sometimes the mistake gets made that parents say, well, the only thing I'm going to do is just accept, whatever he does, whatever he says, whatever he wants, and I'm just going to pray for him, and I'm going to say zero, absolutely zero for the rest of, the future. And I don't think that that's wise. I think, one has to gauge it case by case, moment by moment, day by day, month, week, et cetera, into the future. And then look for those opportunities to speak and to address, the topic as it comes up. And, I think sometimes, too, depending how it goes, at some point he may come to you and say something like, I'd really like you to use the opposite pronouns for me, because if you don't, it's going to make me feel very uncomfortable. And, a statement like that is able to trigger, help you to give a similar response and say something like, well, you understand that if I use the wrong pronouns here, it's going to make me very uncomfortable as well. So why don't we sit down and, discuss this a little bit further and, try in a balanced and sensitive way then to open up some channels of dialogue. Now, this can be hard to do, opening up those channels, because what sometimes happens, I've seen this in other families, when a son or a daughter comes out and announces this, they sort of vanish from the family. They disappear as if into thin air, and they join, a group of transgender individuals who sort of become their substitute family. And so they separate themselves even from their own brothers and sisters sometimes, and go into that alternative group that they now identify with. So that can be challenging, too, to kind of, again, try to keep points of contact available. But I think very important to do that to the best of your ability, and to look for those moments of potential discussion and sharing, and, not being afraid to share your own challenge in the face of what he has announced. So I hope that's helpful, Joseph. The other piece here that I think I just mentioned in passing, I'm not sure whether your son is very religious, very practicing religious, but, I hope he has some practice as a Catholic, and to the extent that you can continue to support that and encourage him to stay close to the sacraments, especially confession. There's all kinds of graces that can kind of come sideways and surprise us and, redirect us towards the truth through those encounters with the Lord sacramentally.
Yes, I'd like to give two follow-ups to that if I'm allowed. Could that?
Sure, go ahead, Joseph. Go ahead, please.
On two things. Thank you so very much. Number one, I think, Father, your insight is very interesting in terms of this trans friends and things like that. And our son has had quote unquote a steady girlfriend through college and after college now, and we've never really tried to put our nose into this business too much. And he's never been a son that really shares a lot, but to show you how far off the rails things can go. So he shared in our initial conversation that he loves his girlfriend. Turns out she identifies as bisexual. And we, sort of in the interactions, we feel like she may have actually been maybe the source of sort of instigating this transition. And so that is just like, when you hear something like that, it just opens up a reality, I think, to all of us, how utterly bizarre these situations can be. And secondly, we're very thankful that he still has the light of faith And we have tried to, just do as you say, just open, and I appreciate that confirmation, and just I guess you'd say letting the Holy Spirit just open the doors gently. I think is maybe what I'm hearing.
Father?
Yes, well, those are interesting additional features that you've mentioned, or characteristics of, his journey into this, the question of whether his girlfriend might have had. I mean, our friends are hugely important, especially when we're young, and so that's definitely a possibility, what you're describing. And, that may mean that, she'll be part of the journey that you'll also need to sort of, be in connection with her as well, to hopefully be able to help your son more effectively as things progress. You're right. It's sometimes bizarre, the twists and turns to these stories. Each of them is a little different. Each family does have a different journey or pathway into these types of occurrences. You've probably heard, you were mentioning the 8% or more of the students in some high schools, are claiming this, and there is this phenomenon of rapid onset gender dysphoria that researchers have been looking at, where you have somebody in a high school who comes out, and then when she does it, it's usually girls these days who are claiming that they are guys. And when the first girl does it, then her girlfriend also does it, and then 2 or 3 of her other girlfriends, and there's sort of a nucleus or cluster of individuals who come out as transgender. And it's as they say, rapid onset and sort of peer pressure driven. This is a new phenomenon. This is not a classical gender dysphoria that psychiatrists have worked with, during the past 100 years. This is rather a new phenomenon. And so, I think we are seeing some new phenomena that are arising around gender dysphoria today. And some of them are genuine dysphoria types of cases. Others maybe not. They may be more, a reflection of a desire of young people for other things, maybe attention, maybe peer support, who knows. But at any rate, your description of the effect of the girlfriend just reminds us of how these things are in somewhat of a changing state, I think, currently.
Thanks very much for the call and for the opportunity to discuss what I think many people are in need of discussion of. Many families dealing with these these strange times and their effect on young people in particular. Joseph, thank you very, very much. It's your opportunity to call and talk about bioethics with Father Tad Pacholczyk, the Director of Education for the National Catholic Bioethics Center. If you have a question about life in any of its stages, about the current state of science, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Linda's in Dayton, Ohio, listening on Sacred Heart Radio. Linda, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Yes, thank you so much. And to both of you for your beautiful ministries.
Thank you.
This is a question, Father, about Medi-Share. Our local Catholic station is now advertising Medi-Share, which, as I recall, is not like Solidarity or CUF Curo. It's more Protestant, and I figure it probably might pay for things like sterilization or in vitro or abortifacient birth control, etc. So I'm wondering, am I right? Would it be inappropriate for the station to be doing this, or do they just have enough remote connection that it's not important? And thank you.
Father, do you know about Medi-Share? Is this something you're...
I don't know the fine details of what their coverage would include, but I do know, as mentioned, that it's got a Protestant root, and so my sense would be very much the same, that there could be concerns that there would be a willingness to provide reimbursements for contraception in particular. In vitro fertilization, I'm not sure. Where they would come down on that. I think it would be the sort of thing that that it would make sense to investigate. But certainly, the question of whether a Catholic station should be promoting it, I think if after investigation it became clear that there was reimbursement for a number of these problematic procedures and interventions, then clearly it doesn't make sense for the Catholic station to be providing airtime or coverage in advertising terms for such an entity. Understandably, the desire here is to help people to be able to afford medical expenses and to do it in kind of a shared way. But it's important to make sure that one isn't inadvertently supporting problematic approaches.
Linda, thank you very much for the question. That brings us to the break. Right back with more questions for Father Tad Pacholczyk on bioethics on Catholic Answers Live. Want to get right to the core of Christ's saving message? Want a roadmap for living the life Christ calls you to? It's time to look again at the Beatitudes. In his new book, Heart of the Gospel, How the Beatitudes Show Us God's Plan for Happiness, Father Sebastian Walsh demonstrates compellingly how these 8 declarations make up the foundation, the essence, and the final goal of Jesus' teaching. Heart of the Gospel illuminates the scriptural passages from which we get the Beatitudes, explains the significance of their wording, their order, and their timing in Jesus' ministry. And it draws out edifying parallels and connections with salvation history and the lives of the saints. Most importantly, Father Walsh offers wise counsel from his own work as a priest and teacher to help you live the Beatitudes in your own life. Order your copy of Heart of the Gospel today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers Monthly Giving Club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking bioethics. If you have a bioethics question, maybe about life in its earliest stages, something maybe about I was going to say how babies are born, but babies are born all different ways nowadays. Babies are created all different ways. Anything about the beginning of life, those questions are welcome. End of life issues, growing in importance as ethicists work through what is required in end of life care. What is not permitted as far as, especially around suicide and euthanasia, or you got questions about life in any of its stages, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. I do have to make an important announcement. No longer Director of Education for the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Father Tad Pacholczyk, now Senior Ethicist. So I apologize, Father, for neglecting your promotion to Senior Ethicist.
Oh, no worries at all. It's not a particularly big deal.
Well, it is if there are some junior ethicists. If there are no junior ethicists, then I don't think senior ethicist is that big a deal. So,
well, good point. Good
okay.
point.
All right. All right, fair enough. 888-318-7884, the number. 3 lines open if you've got a question for Father Tad Pacholczyk. Steve is in Nipomo, California, watching on YouTube, as he does. Welcome back, Steve. Go ahead with your question for Father Tad Pacholczyk.
Thank you. Sorry. Just was curious. I was reading about article about epigenetics and stuff, and of course, in vitro fertilization is wrong according to Catholic morals. But I was just curious, what's the truth about that? How successful, how much problems are they really having with that?
With in vitro fertilization?
The procedure of doing in vitro fertilization, the problems, all the issues with that. Just was curious because I knew I could get the truth from him.
You certainly can. Father, tell us about the Catholic perspective on in vitro fertilization.
Yes, well, great question, Steve. This has become really quite commonplace, I would say. We're talking 12 million babies in the world that have entered the world, been born through the technology of in vitro fertilization. Interestingly, the countries that are doing in vitro fertilization at the highest rates, I thought that it was the United States, and it was for a while, but we have been surpassed by China and Japan. Both of them are doing in vitro fertilization at even higher rates than we are. So it's become very common. It's the kind of thing where a lot of times when a husband and a wife get married, they try to have kids, they realize, gee, there's some impediment here. They go and they meet up with their physician. Maybe he does a few tests, can't find anything obvious that's the matter as to why they might be infertile. They've been trying for a full year to get pregnant and nothing has happened. Then the doctor will say, well, if you want a baby, just go down the street to that clinic and pay them and let them make a baby for you. And so what this proposal involves at its core is the creation of life outside the marital embrace. In fact, creating life in glassware. And this is definitely the wrong place to be bringing new life into existence. The church has become really the lone remaining voice, pointing out that this involves a failure to respect the dignity of our own children. They are entitled to enter the world the same way as the rest of us, out of that act of self-giving love, body to body, of the two spouses, one to another, flesh to flesh, that engenders that new flesh of their own baby. And to do it another way, to, pay others to take this process so that the parents are little more than donors of gametes, donors of sex cells, sperm and egg, and then they hand those over to somebody else to mix and match, involves a very kind of depersonalized approach and really is a form, regrettably, of manufacturing children. And children, are too sacred, they're too special, they're too beautiful to be brought into the world in that fashion. So the church has pointed this out to a number of different documents over the years, and I just wish more people had ears to hear this. I think a lot of people, when they look at this in vitro fertilization, and if they do get to the point of saying, yeah, it seems like there's something ethically not okay here, the reason they usually give is they say, well, you make a lot of embryos, and then you get stuck with these embryos being in the deep freeze, and, well, that's not very pleasant. And that's true. That's a form of what we call collateral damage that's quite serious. And, is certainly a pointer towards the fact that the whole process itself is problematic. But it's not the central reason, really. But, I've dealt with couples who come to me and they'll say, we did in vitro fertilization, 18 years ago, and we had a baby, and then we ended up with 7 frozen embryos, and we haven't done anything with them, and now we're no longer fertile. What should we do with them? And, we regret the fact that we did this. We see that the church was right. What should we do? So you realize what a dilemma they, in fact, have placed themselves into. So the better part of wisdom here really is to, look closely at this and to realize also that when a married couple encounters infertility, that this is oftentimes an invitation from the Lord to look at, well, is the Lord asking us to be fruitful in some other way? In other words, first, of course, they should try to see if there's something obvious they can fix. I mean, if her fallopian tube has a blockage and you could just remove the blockage and then she could have relations with her husband and get pregnant, of course, that would be wonderful and the best path forward. But if it turns out that they cannot have kids no matter what, that there's something really, preventing that, like he has 0 sperm or something like that, then it really is an opportunity to say, well, what is the Lord doing here? How does he want us to be fruitful as a couple? What other possibilities are there? And, often there are things like big brother, big sister outreach in the community, where maybe kids have lost their own parents and they need parental figures. There could be adoption. There are many other ways, sometimes becoming a school teacher where you have a whole group of kids, etc. The Lord is oftentimes leading into a path that's a new path and maybe one that the couple wasn't expecting. But if the couple is willing to be generous in their response with the Lord, they will find, very, very beautiful depth of fulfillment in that radical male-female complementarity that they share as husband and wife, and a real, authentic fruitfulness there. So, those are a few sort of general remarks about in vitro fertilization, and, I hope they're helpful.
Oh, Steve, thanks very, very much for the call. All of a sudden, lots of folks on the line, so we will continue letting folks ask Father Tad Pacholczyk questions on bioethics. Sue is in Dallas, Texas, listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Sue, awful glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Father Tad Pacholczyk.
Thank you, Father Tad. Today I got an email from a Protestant friend of mine, and she said she's being drawn to the Catholic Church because of the teaching that we have on contraception and also warning people of the hazards and dangers of in vitro fertilization, which is such a blessing. And she even said that she's looking into teaching NFP, which is wonderful. She did have one other question for me, and that is, what is the Church's teaching on embryo adoption?
Okay, great question. Yes. This one comes up quite a bit. In other words, those frozen embryos that I had mentioned that people end up with at the end of the IVF procedure, people are wondering, would it be okay if I hand those embryos over to another couple who might be willing to implant them, gestate them, and raise them as if they were their own? So the Church has dealt with this question in the most recent document called Dignitas Personae, on the dignity of the human person. It's a bioethics document, really the most recent one out of the Vatican. And the language there is clearly very cautionary. The Vatican is pointing out there are a lot of concerns around this. And in that document, it actually says if a couple is doing the embryo adoption for the purposes of addressing their own infertility, then it's wrong. So they do say that outright. So you ask yourself, okay, the Vatican has recognized there's clearly this case where it's wrong, and then it also mentions in general, even if the couple is doing it not to treat their own infertility, but maybe out of, an altruistic kind of generous desire to rescue these frozen embryos, well, I think there are still significant concerns that are raised by this, and this document, is heading in that direction. Now, the document doesn't come out and say, in all circumstances, everywhere, and in very, very strong language that it's always wrong, but it's clearly cautionary language, and I think in the future, my personal opinion is that there's a reasonable likelihood that the Church will come out with even stronger language against this. And so people will sometimes say, well, this seems so difficult because we have all these frozen embryos, and what do we do with them? And I always say to them, look, sure, there's a lot of frozen embryos. There's 1.5 million just in the United States, and we're probably producing several thousand more every day, several thousand. Think about that, every single day in the U.S. And so the question is, if we have some Band-Aid, tiny little Band-Aid like embryo adoption, is that going to stop this assembly line? Clearly not. The people who are running these fertility clinics are going to continue to churn out embryos. And if we say that this is something that you can do, they may even say to themselves, hey, let's just make more embryos, because there will always be people who can adopt them later. And so the evil will be magnified even further, and there'll be a way in which, we're drawn into a kind of complicity over this. So I know it's very tempting to think that this would be some kind of a solution, but I say to people, the reality here is if we want a real solution, we need to pass a law like they have in Italy or in Germany, which says that you cannot make more than 3 embryos when you do IVF, only 3, and all 3 have to be implanted into mom. That's the rule over there in Germany and Italy. I wish we had a law like that in the U.S., because that would prevent this ongoing humanitarian tragedy from continuing right under our noses as it is doing. So embryo adoption, I don't think offers any real solution or avenue out of what's a very, very troubling practice that has gained a foothold and really become standard operating procedure in so many situations in our society today.
Okay,
so I hope that clarifies.
Great. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you for the call. And I'm fascinated by what you said, because we do hear this about this friend of yours being attracted to the Catholic Church precisely because of the things that many people tell us the Catholic Church should be changing on, with contraception and in vitro fertilization and those kinds of things. So Patrick Madrid wrote a book about that, as a matter of fact, Surprised by Life. That is, people coming into the Catholic Church because of the Catholic consistent stance on the value, the dignity, and the requirement to treat with care every single human life from conception to natural death. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Father Tad Pacholczyk and your calls on bioethics right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I have never seen women who want to be equal absolutely degrading themselves. And yet the media degrades your nature, your beauty as a woman, your goodness. Let us pray at some point our dear Lord touches their hearts.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and His gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father Tad Pacholczyk is our guest this hour from the National Catholic Bioethics Center, where he is the senior ethicist. A couple of folks on the line, but I want to read you this one from YouTube, Father, from Jay Susan on YouTube, because I've never heard this question before. If a pregnant mom has a surgery on her baby in the womb, where the baby is lifted out for the procedure, can the baby be baptized before being placed back into the uterus?
Wow, Sai, that's a great question. Yeah, I have to say, I haven't heard that one myself either. So here's how I think I would approach that question. I think I would say that to the extent that the physicians believe that there is, a reasonable danger of death here that might be present because of the fact that the surgery needed to be done, then I would say, yeah, baptism would make sense. I would say if this was something that was more like, fixing a cleft palate, so it was more of a cosmetic thing that if you do it early, it'll help the baby, but there's not any obvious danger to the baby continuing the pregnancy, then I would say, it would make sense to continue the pregnancy, and after the baby is born, have the baptism with the whole family present, at the church, rather than a kind of emergency baptism. I think that's how I would approach that.
All right. Thank you, Jay Susan, for that very interesting question. We'll go now to Daniel in Colorado watching on YouTube. Daniel, thanks for the call. Go ahead with your question for Father Tad Pacholczyk.
Thanks, Cy. So, Father Tad.
Daniel, you got to get closer to that phone. Can you get any way you can get closer to that phone?
Does this work?
Kinda.
Testing.
Thank you for calling from 1982. I don't know where you got this phone, but go ahead. We'll see if we can hear it. Daniel? Oh, he tried to get the phone to work and he hung up. All right, I'm sorry. I apologize for. I'm sure that Daniel is not a time traveler from 1982, but the phone connection just sounded like it. Let's go to Chris in New York, listening on WOPG. Daniel, call back. By the way, we'll put you right on if we just lost you. Chris, go ahead with your question for Father.
Thank you for taking the call. It's basically a three-part question. In general, how does one determine the ethnic production of vaccines, in particular the HPV vaccine? And then does the Bioethics Center have any examples of language that can be used to contact pharmaceutical companies to express concern with how they're producing vaccines and try to nudge them in the proper way?
Yes, Chris, great questions. So maybe I'll take your second one first. We do have language available, as does the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, the USCCB. They have sample letters that can be used to write your own letter of concern to some of the pharmaceutical companies that are involved in the production of vaccines, to encourage them to step away from using abortion-derived cell lines and to use alternative cell lines in the production of future vaccines. So you do ask about how does one figure out what's reasonably produced, an ethical production process for vaccines, and certainly one component does revolve around this question of, were abortion-derived cell lines used? So this means that at some point in the past there was a cell line that was derived from an aborted baby's body after an abortion, and that cell line is a group of cells that continues to grow on its own. And researchers and scientists, continue to use that cell line, as does Big Pharma and, other research entities. So that's something that does raise moral concerns, and we need to continue to make it clear that this is something that we don't want to see in future iterations of vaccines. And so, for example, there was the shingles vaccine that at one point was produced using abortion-derived cell lines, and then there was another company that came out with an alternative, which is now the standard for shingles, and that new vaccine does not rely on abortion-derived cell lines. So that's the kind of thing we want to see happening more and more in the future. And, it's worth mentioning, too, that there's the direct manufacturing of the vaccines, which can rely on those cell lines, but sometimes it's not just the manufacturing, but later they do, after they've made the new vaccine, even if they made it in a pristine way, they may do some testing later using cell lines that were derived from abortions to test how the vaccine behaves. So ideally, one would prefer to avoid both of those to the extent possible. So I think the last part of your question then was for HPV. You were wondering the human papillomavirus vaccine. And I don't recall off the top of my head the details there, but I want to recommend that you check out a website, Children of God for Life. They have a chart that they have put together, a nice chart that goes through the various different vaccines and indicates which ones use problematic cell lines and which ones do not. And, you know, the other piece, though, just to wrap up on your question, I think it's important to understand that even if a vaccine is produced in a cell line that's derived from abortion, if you have a serious reason that you need to be vaccinated, it is allowable to receive that. But when you receive that vaccine, you indeed should make some effort to register your displeasure at the fact that no alternative was available, that you would have preferred an alternative, and that, you know, there's a duty on the part of those who are doing the manufacturing of these vaccines to shift away from abortion-derived cell lines. So I hope that's helpful, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks very, very much for the call. The guys in the studio say I have to apologize. I didn't realize I was being a turkey I was being a turkey towards that last caller. I couldn't hear him, and then I made a smart Alec remark. I said Alec, and then he dropped, and maybe he dropped because I was being mean, and I didn't mean to be mean. I apologize, Daniel, for that. So I'm going to read his question. What ethically am I responsible for in administering drugs as a healthcare administrator?
Okay, that is going to depend on where you are in sort of the hierarchy of administrators.
Okay.
So, and sort of what, I mean, it's going to depend on, are you involved as an administrator in setting policy and maybe writing protocols that will affect the physicians under you? And to the extent that you are, and you have, you know, some ability to make decisions in that domain, you will be responsible to be sure that, you know, drugs are not made available that would be used for immoral purposes. So, you know, for example, if you were at a Catholic hospital, let's say in Oregon, and there was pressure being brought to bear that you need to write a policy that will allow for physicians to prescribe a toxin so that people can commit physician-assisted suicide at your hospital, as an hospital administrator, you never could do that. That would be always immoral. So it'll depend, you know, on sort of where you are in that hierarchy of administrators and what your specific relationship is towards the dispensing of the drugs that you mentioned.
As states become more activist in this kind of thing, are you all at the National Catholic Bioethics Center dealing more with those kind of administrator and doctor type questions about what can I do and how am I supposed to respond to this?
Definitely. We get those questions coming at us all the time. Physicians, certainly, but also administrators, people who, you know, are beginning to have qualms of conscience, and they realize, gee, I'm pretty high up the food chain here. Seems that I have a lot of responsibility, and am I, you know, in the presence of the Lord Jesus Christ, living out my vocation fully?
If you need help, you can always look up the National Catholic Bioethics Center at nbccenter.org or give them a call, and they will help you out. Father Tad Pacholczyk, Senior Ethicist. Thank you very much for
You're
the hour.
welcome. By the way, Cy, just quickly, it was NCB Center.
Oh, I said it wrong. I apologize. I also apologize for being rotten to one of the callers. I didn't mean to be. Father Tad, could we have your blessing before we go?
Yes, of course. May Almighty God bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you so much, Cy.
That'll do it for us. Tomorrow, 2 hours of open forum. don't miss it. We'll be here, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.